When we came out with our first 1 to 10 FFP scope, probably about 2 years ago, it was the lowest price 1 to 10 FFP scope on the market by like an order of magnitude. I think the next cheapest one on the market was a SIG scope that cost $700, also made in China. That was $700.
Wow. Welcome to episode 19 of the Frugal Firearms Podcast, the podcast that is here to serve your needs. And by serve your needs, I mean keep money in your pocket, allow you to enjoy the shooting sports at a minimal cost. And by that, we don't mean cheap, we mean value. We're here to expose you to those products that maybe you've never seen, maybe you don't get to trade shows, you don't get to range days, you don't get to see these things on your friends' rifles. Maybe you listen to a lot of other podcasts that talk about all the Gucci stuff that you'd love to own someday, but hey, you've got bills, you've got to pay rent or mortgage, you've got to put the kids through school, you've got car payments, maybe you live in California and you've got ridiculous taxes and you have ridiculously high, gas prices. So in that vein, we're going to bring on one of our favorite companies, Monstrum, which I've promised you now for a couple shows. Didn't tell you what company it was, but I told you we were going to do an optics show, and that is this show. So we have with us Gerald Kim from Monstrum. Gerald, welcome to Frugal Firearms Podcast, and the floor is yours, sir. But give us a little short, background on yourself, how you became involved in Monstrum, and what makes you guys different.
All right. Thank you, Craig. And thank you, Ken, for hosting me. I think there's a good alignment between the your podcast and what we try to do at Monstrum. So to give you a little bit of color as to how Monstrum was started, we started in 2009. At the time, I was living in China, and my partner and I had always been somewhat business minded, and we wanted to start a consumer products business. We went to the Canton Fair together. The Canton Fair it's kind of a trade show for manufacturers in China to present their products to buyers from other countries. So we went there to research a number of product lines with the intent on starting a business. We investigated a few different product lines, and we eventually settled on rifle scopes as our niche. To be clear, we were not gun experts or optics experts at the time. It was more of a market research driven decision. We both kind of thought guns were cool. We saw we could make a little bit of money reselling them, and that's how we started. We bought $30,000 worth of rifle scopes, brought them back, and we sold them mostly at gun shows and through eBay. Beyond that, we didn't really know what we were doing. We just kind of picked it up along the way. It took us a few years to really hit our stride. It was in 2012 when we first started selling on Amazon, and that was kind of when we really kind of picked up steam, and we haven't really looked back since.
So you said that you came into the field without, a lot of experience in the area. Do you have a background in optics, or was it just you learned it along the way by looking at what other people did and then found better ways to do it?
Yeah, like I said, we had no background in optics, any of that. We just bought some stuff and tried to tried to resell it. We're a lot different today as a company as we were than we were back then. I would say at that time we were buying a lot of stuff in China and basically slapping our name on it and reselling it. It's like, over the past 15 years, we've learned a thing or two about manufacturing and about how optics work. And we have a full-time optics engineer on our staff, as well as our own industrial designers on staff that build our own product line from scratch. And everything we bring to market today is originally designed and, offers features and benefits that other people don't. But yeah, back then, like I said, it was more of a market research driven decision. We didn't really know what we were doing, but you had to start somewhere.
I think a lot of people don't know that There's a video out there on YouTube, and I don't remember who posted it, but it is an excellent video. And it talks about how a lot of the scopes that are available on the retail market, particularly the ones with overseas manufacturing, are really the same scope, repackaged in a different tube, in a different form factor with a different reticle or something like that. But optically, they're the same thing, and they're probably being OEM'd by just one or two companies. And if you're clean sheeting your designs, I mean, good on you for that. Is that really a thing in optics that a lot of OEMs aren't really the OEM and they're simply buying someone else's design and then putting their own graphics on it and things like that?
It certainly is that way to a certain extent. I think it was more common, say, 10, 15 years ago, when e-commerce and the direct to consumer model was a lot less competitive. I mean, you could buy something from the Canton Fair, turn around and resell it in the US for a profit. It was pretty straightforward to do. I think now it's become much more competitive. Now you have just hundreds of players in the market where that really wouldn't cut it today. When we come out with a product today, we want to make sure that the product either A offers some type of functionality that someone else does not offer, or B, we can sell at a significantly lower price than everyone else on the market. A lot of times, like, a customer will come to us and say, like, oh, well, why can't you produce this product? Vortex makes this product, or Primary Arms makes this product. Why can't you come out with something like that? I think my response to them will be, well, we don't want to come out with that product because Vortex already sells that product, or so and so already sells that product. And if we're going to come out with the same product at the same price, what's the point? I mean, you could just buy it from Vortex. When we come out with something today, we really want to offer something, some form of added value to the customer, whether it's price wise or feature wise, even if it's just like stylistic elements, like making something look cooler.
Yeah, Craig and I have been, involved with firearms for more than 40 years, and I remember back, in the early days when we were inheriting firearms from our dads or for our uncles or whatever it might be. A lot of the scopes that I have on some of my older stuff, they were made in the 50s, 1950s,
Mhm.
1960s type of deal. And they were all, fixed power, fine scope probably for their time. But one of the things I noted at starting around like 1989 or so, when the wall fell in East Germany, and you had Germany begin to, then all of a sudden we saw a whole bunch of these East German optics companies start selling in the West, and also these Russian optics things that started coming into the market in the late 1980s, early 1990s, and it's like, wow, this is some pretty decent stuff compared to the stuff that I've been looking at, these 50s and 60s optics, and it's only gotten better over time. As was Craig had mentioned, I had an opportunity to look through, I guess 3 or 4 of your scopes, and I was just like super impressed by the quality, first focal plane, second focal plane, and just the whole quality of the whole thing. The beast. I mean, the thing is rock solid. I was just really blown away by how much things have really improved these last few years, and again at a price point that makes entry for the hobbyist, to the person who doesn't have a ton of money, basically our core group, a whole lot easier to do than to go out there and spend more for the optics than you spent for the rifle, for example.
Oh, well, yeah, thank you for saying that. Product quality is something we definitely focus on. I mean, like I said, we've been in business for about 15 years, and we come out with new product lines like multiple times a year. I mean, we probably are at this point, we're probably releasing on average like 3 to 4 new rifle scope lines every year. And with every line, we're trying to make incremental improvements to the product every time we release it. The improvements might come just based on customer feedback or feedback we get from people that we work with respect to like offering certain features or just making just improving things from a quality standpoint, or they also might come from a price standpoint where we just find some way in the manufacturing process to just save a couple dollars here or there. And doing this iteratively over and over again for the past 15 years, we've been able to make quite a bit of progress since then. I think if you were to look back at some of our older scopes, like say, from the 2010 to 2015 era, like maybe I think Craig mentioned he had one of our older scopes. Maybe that's a scope we might not have been like today. We're not quite as proud of it as we are of some of the newer stuff.
If it had been a bad scope, I probably would have never come up and talked to you at last year's SHOT Show.
Okay, well, I'm glad to hear it. But yeah, I mean, our goal with every new product line that we release is just to become better and better with each product line.
You've raised the bar. There's no doubt about that. One of the things you're talking about was like brands 20 years ago. Are there any brands from that used to be around 20 years ago, either the import or any of the optics companies that are probably not with us today? And can you learn anything from that?
Yeah, so I think it dovetails really well with the Monstrum story and how we've grown as a company. So if you look back 20 years ago, I mean, there was an assault weapon ban in the US that was lifted in 2004. And if you look at gun ownership at that time, AR-15 sales in the year 2005 was approximately 300,000 to 400,000 a year. Versus you look at it today in 2024, it's approximately 3 to 4 million per year. In 2005, there were approximately between 4 and 7 million Americans that owned AR-15s. And if you compare that to 2024, it's some estimates put it at about 20 million Americans. So, over the past 20 years, the market has grown significantly, and it really is kind of much different than it was back then. In 2004, I think the majority of people that owned guns, and especially tactical guns, most of them were primarily like military and law enforcement, or either that or just really hardcore enthusiasts. Besides like gun manufacturers themselves, which were limited mainly to like a handful of like kind of like bigger brands, like the Colts and the Bushmasters of the world. In the optics segment, it was really dominated by just kind of a handful of companies. So companies that you will have heard of, like Trijicon, Aimpoint, EOTech. These were kind of the biggest sellers of optics at that time. The thing about these companies is these companies, they actually make most of their sales and profits from military contracts and from law enforcement contracts. Those are the primary consumers of these optics. I'm trying to say this kind of diplomatically, but it's like it makes it tricky for them to sell those products to both through these government contracts, and then to turn around and sell them to consumers as well.
Is it tricky because of technology transfer rules, or is it because it's just an economic reality that the two, like, someone buying a scope who has an institution behind them and someone buying a scope that has their own wallet behind them are two very different markets?
Exactly, exactly. I would say it's that second thing. So to secure a government contract and to sell to law enforcement, these products, they are built to certain specs and to certain qualities, and they sell at a price point that kind of reflects that. These
Hmm.
optics cost thousands of dollars, and
Right.
it's a big ask to then to turn around and sell this to an average consumer who's putting it just on a gun that they've purchased themselves, and that's they might have they might be putting that on a gun that they take to the range a few times a year, or they take it out every once in a while, and they just want to have it around for security security reasons. So
Yeah.
it's a big ask to for them to shell out that kind of money when they may not need it built to those same
Right.
specifications.
They're not crawling around in the dirt and under fire all the time. I mean, most of the people that are probably our listeners, they are those range people who take it to the range, bench shooters or whatever, even hunters who go out into the field. But again, it's not you're not under fire. You're not crawling down on the
Well, okay,
ground.
you're probably not in an active firefight as, the way you draw your paycheck, but at the same time, I mean, Gerald's products have a lifetime warranty.
Oh yeah.
And so, maybe we, jump to that topic, Gerald. I mean, why are you confident enough? And I'm going to come back, by the way, to the import discussion because I think that's, kind of the elephant in the room that I think that people want to talk about. But let's talk about the quality. I mean, you have enough confidence in your products to offer a lifetime warranty. And, you and I have already had conversations, on the side about how that works. And, you have to have a lot of confidence in there. And, okay, I don't know where you draw the line in terms of saying, well, this was kind of abusive because you jumped out of a helicopter 50 feet above the ground. But, but at the same time, how long did it take you maybe to grow into that confidence?
It took a few years. I mean, it was kind of a leap from us. Originally, I think we offered like a 1 year warranty, and then we moved it to a 2 year warranty, and then at some point, maybe 5 or 6 years ago, we finally decided to just convert it to a lifetime warranty. Like I said, I've been doing this for 15 years, and I have a lot of we sell hundreds of thousands of products every single year, and I know exactly how many of our products come back as defective. And the number is very low, anywhere between 1 to 2%, I would say, are returned due to some type of manufacturing defect. When they are returned due to some type of defect, it usually happens like right off the bat, like there's something wrong with it, and people realize it right away. So it was not a big leap from us to go from a 1 year warranty to a lifetime warranty. Like I said, I have more data than everyone else, so I was able to I was able to just confidently convert it to a lifetime warranty, and it really has not drastically altered the amount of returns that come back. I mean, you mentioned people jumping out of helicopters. I mean, most of my customers
Yeah.
are not they're not
Yeah.
doing that. So, and no, nobody wants to get a bad product and have to go through the hassle of returning something and getting it replaced. I know that it's a tremendous inconvenience, and people don't want to have to worry about that. So, offering a lifetime warranty, it's more of something that's like we're just trying to communicate to consumers that's not something that you have to worry about with our products. We really just want to put people's minds at ease. We don't want you to be concerned about getting something and having it be defective and wasting your time installing it and going out to the range and wasting the ammo. I mean, I know how much of an inconvenience that is. So we really offer it to just put people's minds at ease.
So how do you describe your typical customer then? I mean, if so you said you have a lot of data, so what kind of person typically goes up to your booth? What kind of typical person orders your stuff? I mean, I'm imagining you have some mix of law enforcement and military and tactical guys and hunters and long range shooters and tell me about who's your target market?
It's definitely budget oriented customers. Fortunately for us, I would say most people are budget oriented in one respect or another. We tend to get a lot of younger customers or people who are maybe just getting into gun ownership for the first time, and they want to test the waters without
Breaking the bank.
yeah, without dropping like $5,000 on a rifle build.
No.
And beyond that, it's just kind of everyday people that they really can't justify putting that amount of money into equipment. I think you guys mentioned it before, but I mean, there's a huge segment of the market. I mean, they're just people that enjoy shooting or owning guns or keeping guns at their house for personal security, and th there's no yeah, there's no justification for that. These people putting in $5,000 into a gun, but they can justify it at say $500 or $1,000 for a gun.
Right. So, I mean, you just mentioned cost. So, how has that cost of gun ownership over the years changed? I mean, we used the number before 20 years. So how has the cost of gun ownership over the last 20 years, changed? And how does that relate to the sector you live in?
Okay, so I mean this is a very salient point, and this is actually some of the like I remember this number because it actually went into the reasoning as to why we started the company and why we picked this segment. At the time we started this company, the average consumer spent about $1,000 on a gun, and then they spent an average of $2,500 on aftermarket accessories, like outfitting that gun. So if we put that number at $3,500 for the average AR-15 in 20 years ago, today you can purchase a budget AR-15 and outfit it with budget optics. Probably kitted out, you could have a AR-15 for under $500. So I mean this kind of goes
Mm.
hand in hand with the AR-15 sales and the AR-15 ownership numbers that I brought up earlier. It's as the market has grown, it's brought a lot more entrants into the market as far as AR-15 manufacturers, accessory manufacturers, optics manufacturers, and these when you have competition, I mean that inevitably drives prices down. Beyond that, it's enabled certain economies of scale where we order a batch of scopes. We can order in the thousands of units at a time versus hundreds of units at a time, and this enables us to bring the per unit cost down. So the two factors, as far as like the size of the market and the price of the end components, I mean they kind of go hand in hand, and they kind of feed off each other to build the kind of booming market that we have today.
Yeah, there's no doubt that what I've seen, like in the rifle market from the ARs from back, 25, 30 years ago or more, 35 years ago, a lot of them were built the AR, which I guess, are we supposed to be moving more to the American sporting rifle? I think is that the new politically
Uh,
pro 2A way to say it. But anyway, but a lot of those were done with like the original Armalite handle top. Remember the A1 top, where the top of the rifle was a handle, and then
yeah.
there were very few options for you to be able to attach a scope on the top of the handle. Colt, I think, made some very modest optic that you could put up there. But today, I never see that type of thing on an AR build these days. Everything now is flat top. Picatinny rails, whatever.
M-lock. Yeah. Hmm.
M-lock, yeah, and it used to be just a little bit on above the receiver. Now those rails run the whole length from all the way from the gas check at the front of the barrel, so you can do all sorts of stuff. People are putting on, they're hanging on optics on the top, and they're doing the 45-degree angle offset ones for backup iron sights and or backup red dot for close in work stuff. And even in the handgun space, and of course, Craig and I started back in the day, as they say, in the handguns perspective, we never would have put, except for maybe some sort of a target pistol, target revolver, hunting revolver. You wouldn't put an optic on a pistol, but now it's like, oh no, red dots on pistols are almost becoming, a standard. I mean, they're starting to be sold that way. So the whole movement toward optic accessories and changing the way you shoot and aim and everything like that to optics is, I don't know. It's interesting, and I'm glad, particularly in the rifle space, to do it. I'm a little less on board with it in the pistol range because I'm an iron sights guy.
I'm
But
not.
uh, I know you're not.
Screw it.
That's where Greg and I differ a little bit
Red
on
dot
that.
all day long, man. I mean,
Yeah, keep it.
for you, then it gives you target focus, and if you have astigmatism, it just helps. I mean,
Okay,
but that's my opinion. And this show is all about opinions, and not
it is.
yes. But so that kind of brings up another point here. I mean, the difference between the gun accessory market, which I think Ken is talking about, And the gun and gun parts market. You had mentioned
Yes.
that earlier, Gerald.
Yes. So, I mean, I kind of wanted to bring up this point because there's an interesting distinction between the two. So, a gun part is defined as something that is kind of critical in the operation of a gun. So, something like a trigger or a barrel, that's considered a gun part. Versus a gun accessory is something that is kind of optional. Like so, like if you would say like a red dot, I mean, something can be used with or without a red dot, or if you were to say like a flashlight. So there's an interesting provision in something called ITAR, which is the piece of legislation that governs import and export of weapons related products. So gun parts are not allowed to be imported from China. That's, I would say, the primary reason why gun parts and guns and ammo, those are all manufactured, for the most part, they're manufactured in the U.S. Gun accessories, those can be imported from China. So that is the reason why you see that most of the gun accessories and gun optics, they're actually manufactured in China. I believe the statistic is something like 80% of the rifle scopes in the U.S. market are actually manufactured in China, and
Really?
that's one. Yes.
Well, it's hard. I get we can't really make glass here because of environmental restrictions and stuff, right?
I mean, I'm sure it's much harder. I mean, it can definitely be done. I mean, there are optics makers that manufacture in the U.S. and that actually like thrive in the U.S. Like the aforementioned companies we talked about. Night Force Optics is one. I believe Loophole manufactures here. I would say it is true that in China, you can make rifle scopes at a significantly lower price than in the U.S. And that's why you see kind of the most of the consumer market has gravitated there.
So you then could maybe speak to the overall, I guess, made in China versus made in USA perspective. And I suppose, maybe for the listeners, I mean, if the reality is that 80% of the scopes are made in China, then that's just the market reality, and there's not a lot a person can do about it. They're not going to home grow their own scope. But maybe why shouldn't they be stressed about that, worried about it, think it's unpatriotic or something like that?
Well, it's true. Like we get some flack and some a lot of the time for being made in China, but it is approximately 80% of of the scopes in the US are made in China, including very large companies like Vortex or Bushnell or SIG. I mean, these are kind of the largest players in the optics market, and they have lines of products that are the bulk of their consumer line is made in China stuff. I mean, we talked earlier about the dilemma that companies like EOTech or Kudukan face in they make a very high end product, and it's very difficult for that product to compete at that price in the consumer market. The way companies like Vortex have done it is they've segmented it. They like Vortex has a high end line that's made in Japan, and then they have like a low end line that's made in China. But to speak a little bit about kind of the made in China versus made in the U.S. thing, I mean, there's a lot to be said there. I guess, I mean, from a business perspective, obviously, when you outsource manufacturing, I mean, there is a trade-off. You do, as an American, and as for America, obviously, there's a loss of, say, thousands of jobs, thousands of manufacturing jobs that go to China that would otherwise be in the U.S. But I would say the benefit of that is you also receive a certain benefit of that, and the benefit of that is that millions of people get access to significantly cheaper products, and
Mhm.
that kind of ties into what I said earlier about the cost of gun ownership kind of plummeting over the past 20 years. So it's true there's a loss of these jobs, but today there are millions of gun owners that can buy $100 scope versus the $2,000 scopes that existed 20 years ago. And the kind of second point I kind of wanted to make about it is it kind of ties together with what I was saying earlier about kind of the boom of the gun industry. So, I mean, Craig, you and I, we met at SHOT Show, and you saw how many companies are presenting at SHOT Show
Hmm.
and how big the industry is today. And, all of these, and I mentioned before about, the gun ownership numbers and, what the industry was 20 years ago versus what it is today. All of these companies and businesses that sprouted up, around gun culture, many of them did not exist 20 years ago. It's enabled kind of new brands and new categories that just weren't there. Like your podcast, for instance, this would not have been a thing 20 years ago.
Oh no. Oh, definitely not. It would
No.
have, well, I mean, frugal's a relative statement, but I mean, it would have been really hard to substantiate, talking about
Yeah,
these things.
but beyond that, I mean, there are tactical like training companies, for instance. There are tactical coffee companies, like companies like Black Rifle Coffee, and
Hmm.
part of so many things have become part of the zeitgeist as kind of as a result of the growth in the industry. And beyond that, like with respect to manufacturing jobs in particular, I mentioned earlier that gun parts and guns can, due to legislation, can only be manufactured in the U.S. The growth of the market has enabled kind of this thriving made in America uh, gun industry with respect to gun parts and guns. I mean, there are many AR-15 manufacturers that are thriving today that weren't 20
Oh
years
yeah.
ago. Companies like Palmetto State Armory
Hmm.
or I mean, I can't even keep track of all the AR-15 manufacturers that are out there now. Even within accessories and optics, I mean, there are made in the USA companies that are thriving. Like Magpul was not what 20 years ago, Magpul was not what Magpul is today. Uh, and it's like they make budgets, accessories and magazines in the USA. And I'll go one step further. Even companies like Trijicon and Aimpoint. I mean, it's true they've lost out a little bit on the low end of the market, but I mean they are still thriving companies on the high ends of the market. I haven't looked at their financial statements, but I'm sure they are doing multiples of what they were doing 20 years ago, and that's kind of as a result of the just the growth of the entire market.
Yeah, military and government has no doubt been a large component of those very high end success stories that you have.
I mean, that is part of it, but I would say even among consumers, there is all just as you can buy a $500 AR-15 today. I mean, you can also buy like a $20,000 AR-15 today. That part of the market has also been enabled by the growth in the market as a whole. I mean, a lot of people like buy our stuff like as an entry level, kind of into the hobby or the lifestyle, and a lot of these people graduate to higher and higher levels of I guess Gucci gear.
We walked the shot show, and it was like it seemed like every other booth had a gold plated AR
Yeah.
of some type. I mean, there were dozens of them that were spread out across the floor, and it got you just eyes glassed over. The first one or two, you're like, "Oh, that's kind of cool." I'll take a picture of it. I mean, I don't know who would ever buy one of those things, but it's kind of cool to look at. But then after the fifth, seventh, 10th, 12th, well, you're like, okay, whatever, just walk by it.
Uh,
Too many of those things going on. But I wanted to something I was thinking about coming. Craig and I have been friends for like 50 years. And back in high school or whatever it was, I remember Craig grinding his own Newtonian lens for his telescope, Newtonian telescope, and how absolutely difficult that grinding of that mirror was, and how long it took to do. So, the creation of quality optics to get it functional and focused was a huge
Oh, I
deal,
could have
even for.
saved a lot of money by buying the damn thing. I mean, that mirror took me like a year to get right. Longer, I think. It was brutal.
I know. I remember. It's like, oh my God, is he ever going to be done with the damn thing? Yeah, you kept at it, and it did work. Impressive, actually.
And it sits in my garage yet today, normally unused. It was a great mirror. I really nailed it, but it took a. If I could have written a check for it now, I probably would have done that, honestly. So, okay, the scopes that you exposed us to for the purposes of evaluation, and by the way, listeners, Gerald did provide us a couple scopes for evaluation, which is normal in these kind of cases. Both of them were first focal plane.
Yes.
In opposition to that, the more common product on the market
Hmm.
is the second focal plane. Now, we
Hmm.
know what those things are, but I'm not going to guarantee that every one of our listeners does. So, could you give us a very quick tutorial on the difference between the two and why you would want one over the other?
So these are terms used for variable magnification scopes.
Hmm.
With a second focal plane scope, the size of the reticle remains constant no matter what the magnification is set to. Versus with a first focal plane scope, the size of the reticle will shrink or enlarge relative to the magnification on the scope. Why does that matter? So typically a reticle will have certain ranging information on it. So it'll have hash marks that denote that are kind of spaced at a certain say 5 MOA apart or 1 MOA apart. In a first focal plane scope, because the reticle enlarges and shrinks relative to the magnification, that ranging information within the reticle will be accurate no matter what the magnification is. So one MOA, a 1 MOA hash mark will be 1 MOA regardless of the magnification. Whereas with a second focal plane scope, the 1 MOA hash mark will be different depending on what the magnification is set to. So if you're using those hash marks for ranging information, you will have to do some type of mental math with a second focal plane scope.
So second focal plane scopes are less expensive to manufacture than first focal plane. Is that what I'm understanding?
That's correct. So traditionally, second focal plane scopes, it's quite a bit. They've been quite a bit less expensive than first focal plane scopes. I probably did not do a good job describing that, by the way. But
No, it's
if
fine.
you go to
It's
our
fine.
YouTube
Yeah.
channel, if you go to YouTube, you'll probably get a much better explanation of that, and it probably makes a lot more sense when you're actually looking at the reticle with graphics on it. But yes, traditionally, second focal plane scopes have been significantly cheaper than first focal plane scopes.
Yeah, because my introduction to scopes was a fixed power scopes. A lot of those 50s and 60s scopes that were, on the older rifles and stuff that I started on, it was a 6 power, whatever it might be, whatever my 6X scope. And that was it. You looked
Mhm.
in and that was it. There was no zoom capability, no magnification change available. But now it's very, very, very common to see, 1 to 6, 1 to 10, or some of the ones that we were looking at here, I mean, went up to 18, even 25 power. Rather impressive for from really long range work. Now, is Monstrum something that's focusing more on the long range rifle shooting? Because that seemed to be a popular sport, and even that's reaching down to those of us who are more in the frugal end of things. People are tending to want to reach out 5, 6, 700 yards, 1,000 yards if you have that ability to range in your area that you can actually do that sort of shooting.
Yes. So, I mean, we offer quite a few long range scopes. I mean, at this point, I mean, Monstrum as a company, I mean, we have over 1,500 different SKUs, and we have scopes that range from 1X all the way up to all the way up to 36X and everything in between. We do have fixed, by the way, we still do offer fixed magnification scopes, and those do still have a place in the market. But we have offered long range scopes for quite some time now. I think you received our most recent version of it, which is the Beast series. But
Right.
I
Hmm.
mean, we've
Loved it.
we've been making long range scopes for the last 10 years. Craig had an iteration of our G1 series, which is probably over 10 years old at this point. We offer products at this point for multiple categories, whether it's for long range, or whether it's for ARs, shotgun. We have a number of shotgun accessories. Yeah, we offer a little bit of everything.
Well, you have one product that we didn't really plan to talk about, but I just want to kind of alert people to it. There's a lot of magnifiers on the market that are flip up magnifiers. Like if you have an EOTech or something like that. I mean, I'll tell you, I have an EOTech on one of my guns. It is not mated with an EOTech magnifier. It's mated with a SIG magnifier, and it works out perfectly fine. You know, the height and everything works. But you have a 2x magnifier that actually goes in front of the optic, which is completely unique because it's agnostic to every, what you put on the other side of it, I think. And that's a very interesting, technological leap, if you will, that I don't think anyone else has tried.
Well, yeah. So the story behind that product is, so we actually sell a full lineup of prism scopes, and we're probably the number one seller of prism scopes on online and on Amazon. If listeners are not familiar with what a prism scope is, it's a fixed magnification scope that uses a prism to refract light within the scope rather than a series of lenses like a traditional scope. And prism scopes tend to be much more compact than regular scopes. But I mean, they differ from a red dot in that, a red dot with something like an aim point, the red dot has unlimited eye relief. So you can position your head anywhere behind the red dot and get a comfortable sight picture. With a prism scope is more akin to a rifle scope in that there's a fixed eye relief. Your eye has to be positioned a certain distance behind the prism scope. So with prism scopes, traditionally, you haven't really been able to use a magnifier with them because the traditional magnifiers that go behind the optic, they kind of, there's not enough space for them.
Well, they live in the space of the eye box, right? I mean, they live in the space where you'd have to have your eye, don't they?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's one reason. And then B, the magnifier has its own fixed eye relief. So your eye has to be positioned a few inches behind the magnifier. So when you put the magnifier in place, you would have to, even if you were to use that configuration, you would have to reposition your head after you put the magnifier in place. The forward magnifier, we designed that to be used with prism scopes. I mean, it can also be used with the red dots and with regular scopes as well. But you can put that in front of your optic. So, with a prism scope, you can set up your prism scope and set up with your given eye relief on the prism scope. And whether or not that magnifier is in place in the front of the prism scope, yeah, your eye relief on the prism scope will be the same. And with this device, I mean, you are able to turn a 1x prism scope into a 2x prism scope, or a 3x prism scope into a 6x prism scope. Just gives you a little bit more options, for your configuration.
And you mentioned 1,500 SKUs.
Mhm.
That's just scopes. I mean, I know you have scope covers, and which are really cool. I happen to like those very much. But you've got a whole bunch of other different things that go along with the scope. So how many actual scopes do you currently in your line? Just the optical.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, the 1,500 SKUs encompass all different types of product categories. Beyond scopes, it's like we're also probably the number one seller of scope rings, scope mounts,
Yeah.
accessory rails, probably a bunch of other things on Amazon. The scopes themselves, I mean, we probably have. I've kind of lost track at this point. Some of them are like kind of older product lines, but I mean, we have over 250 scope SKUs at this point. But I mean, that number might be a little bit. I might be inflating that number a little bit because a lot of them are, say, they might be reticle variations where it's like we have a given scope, but we offer it with like four different
Sure.
reticles.
Yeah. Mil dot versus, yeah,
Exactly.
Versus
Yeah.
MOA or whatever the person's preference
MOA.
is. is it the computer aided design or something that's, and it seems to me there's a lot of challenges in designing a new optic from a clean sheet of paper. I mean, even though the
Mhm.
standards and the methodologies are already, have been known for many years, but it used to be the LPVOs, which means low power variable optic for those who don't know, were pretty much limited to 1 to 4 power. And even whether or not they were a true 1x when they were zoomed all the way out was kind of questionable. You sent us a sample of a 1 to 10 and that was inconceivable not that many years ago. And when you look at the flatness of the optical plane, the fact that it doesn't have a lot of barrel distortion and all these other artifacts that chromatic aberrations and things like that used to be problematic in scopes, quote unquote, back in the day. And by back in the day, I mean under 10 years ago,
Mhm.
now have been swept aside. And is it just because of the increases in computational power to be able to do good design?
In full transparency, I'm probably not the best person to ask this question. We do have an optics engineer on staff whose job it is to actually design the optical systems. But I mean, there are a lot of things at play when designing something like a 1 to 10 scope. I mean, a lot of it is just manufacturing processes. It takes an incredible amount of precision in order to make something. You make an optical system look good at both at both 1x and at 10x. From a manufacturing point of view, it's a challenge. And I know that when we first started making them, we would get a lot of the scopes just during the manufacturing process they ended up just not passing muster. I don't know all the technical details as to why that is, but it was a challenge to bring those products to market. And when we did bring them to market, it's one thing to actually bring these to market, but it's another thing to bring them to market at a budget price that's going to be palatable to most consumers. When we came out with our first 1 to 10 FFP scope, probably about 2 years ago, it was the lowest price 1 to 10 FFP scope on the market by like an order of magnitude. I think the next cheapest one on the market was a SIG scope that cost $700, also made in China. That was $700.
Wow.
So I'm glad that I am glad you brought it up because it was a challenge to bring that to market.
Well, so
Um,
what kind of trade-offs are there then if you're talking about like, okay, so you have to think about durability, you have to think about
mhm,
price point, you have to think about the weight of the object, like what people are
mhm.
willing to actually, I mean, maybe there's a misperception too that like, well, it's heavy, therefore it's quality, or it's light, so it must be bad. And what drives the cost at the manufacturing level of making these decisions, and then you have to scale that obviously to the retail price point. Every design faces trade-offs,
Uh-huh.
and
Uh-huh.
sort of what are those trade-offs, and how do you decide which way to go?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things at play. I mean, first of all, I mean, I do have to give credit to our optics engineer. I mean, he's kind of a genius at making these decisions. And as I said before, it's not just about making decisions. It's not just about building a 1 to 10x scope. It's about building a 1 to 10x scope at the correct price. I mean, there are trade-offs with respect to like lens quality and lens coatings are a huge factor in cost. So like with a scope lens, just dipping it in some type of coating solution, just dipping it in some type of coating that will reduce the glare and will have better light transmission. Like just treating that, like one treatment of a certain type of chemical can cost, say, like up to $20. And like a $20 treatment of a lens might translate to, like, a $50-$60 increase in the retail price of a product. So our optics engineer, I mean, he is in charge of deciding like which treatments and which processes get implemented that are going to be able to be implemented at the correct price. With something like light transmission, there's there's a very subtle difference between a scope that has, say, like 90% light transmission versus something that has 95% transmission. And it might cost an extra, it might cost hundreds, if not thousands of dollars more to get from like say 90% to 95%.
Right.
So, at some point there's a diminishing return beyond a certain point. I
Yeah.
mean, we like our scopes to be functional, and we want the site picture to look good and look clear, and we want our customer to be happy with the product. But at a certain point, there's a cutoff where it's, we have to decide it's good enough, and we don't want to invest the extra, say $20, $50 for it to get from say like 90% transmission to 95% transmission. It's like, because the reality is they're not going to realize any kind of functional difference between the two in most day-to-day situations. So yeah, I mean, these are the trade-offs that you kind of have to think about when you're bringing a product to market that at our price point, at the price point we want to bring it at.
Craig is an audiophile,
Mhm.
and you did your thesis, I think, Craig, on some audio stuff, and you know more about audio than I'll ever know in my whole life. I can't hear the difference between Craig's multi-thousand-dollar speaker set, and the $20 set. I can't hear the difference. I'm sorry. I do have a hearing loss. I admit that,
Well,
probably from
that's your
years of shooting
there's
and
your
stuff.
answer, right?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, to a certain degree, but it's like it doesn't make the difference. I mean, so I
But
can't
it's a two-edged
justify.
sword. I mean, okay, in
It
optics and in
is.
audio and in cars, right? Oh, we've talked about cars before.
Oh yeah,
I
same
mean, I
thing too.
feel
Yeah, cars.
nuances in
Yeah,
cars that I wouldn't say you're immune to,
nah,
that you don't care about. And to me, it would
don't care.
drive me
Yeah,
insane if some of those
yeah,
nuances were manifest in a car
yeah.
or an audio system that I could hear. It would just, I'd like rather listen to nothing. So, as far as scopes go, am I going to say, well, I'd rather not look through a Monstrum scope and it has to be some XYZ expensive brand?
No,
Well, hell, if they're both made in the same country, perhaps in the same factory, or at least the glass originated in the same place, maybe I don't need to spend the money. So I think, Gerald, you had some comments about, the direct to, I mean, you talked a lot about prices and hitting the price point because otherwise you're not in the game. The direct to consumer model versus the distributor wholesale model.
I think earlier you did ask us like, oh, what differentiates Monstrum as a company, and I would say that that's one of the kind of the key differentiators. That really kind of set us apart and put us on the trajectory that we've been on for the past 15 years. I mentioned 20 years ago, the landscape for optics was quite a bit different. But I mean, there were a handful of like made in China companies, like Vortex had just started their made in China line, and you did have companies like Burris and Bushnell, who primarily manufactured out of China. But yeah, one of the key differentiators between say our company and a company like that is that we sell direct to consumer. So with us, we basically buy straight from the scope factory, and then once it's in our hands, we sell directly to the consumers. So we're cutting out a couple of different layers of middlemen. With the traditional
hmm
retail model, you'll have first you'll have the scope factory, and then oftentimes you'll have a buyer that buys for the scope brand. Once the scope is in the hands of the scope brand, they'll sell to a distributor, and then that distributor will then be responsible for getting the scopes in the hands of the retailers, which could be all the brick and mortar stores and all the different websites and all the different gun shops out there. And then from there, it is sold to the end consumer. So, in that model, you have maybe four or five different layers of middlemen, and each person along the way marks it up a certain percent to make it worth their while.
sure.
So the truth is, I mean, there are a handful of factories in China that make that are really good at making scopes or optics, and everybody pretty much knows each other and kind of knows what prices people are paying. A scope that's we the price that we're paying for a scope in China is not that dissimilar to some of the traditional companies that source from China. But by cutting out these layers of middlemen, we're actually able to sell at a significantly lower price. And you can see that reflected in the price of our products compared to say something like a say a Vortex or say a Burris.
Okay. One of the things I'm curious about, I was brought up with when I finally did get the variable scopes and so forth. I mean, MOA was what I was taught, learned with, and versus MilDot. I'm curious, what the percentage of people who go for an MOA scope versus a MilDot scope, and also if you sell in other markets like Europe and stuff like that, is it the same ratio over there, or over there is it all MilDot and over here it's all MOA, or vice versa? What have you found?
So, I mean, I prefer MOA just because it's easier to remember. Just the math makes more sense. Like, so with MOA, like one MOA at 100 yards is 1 inch, and then you can
Yeah,
just kind of figure it out from there. With MilDot, it's you do have to juggle a few numbers around, but for some reason I don't know about the history of it or whatever. For some reason, the precision rifle market in the precision rifle market and the precision rifle crowd, they tend to prefer mil versus MOA.
Well, that's what they're taught.
Yeah, maybe that's what they learn on, I guess, or like I mean, maybe it's more commonly used in the military. I think I'm not sure the exact nature of it, but uh, from uh, from Monstrum's from a business perspective, I would say the sales between the two models are pretty similar between the two. It might vary a little bit from model to model, like a longer range scope versus like a mid range scope or an LPVO. But I mean, we offer both, just depending on your preference. It really doesn't cost us that much more to design a second reticle and spin up two variants of a product. We do not. We don't really sell in countries outside the U.S. The U.S. As a consumer market, the U.S. pretty much dwarfs the entire world, the rest of the world combined. So yeah,
I
we kind of
figured we
prefer.
did.
Yeah, I mean we're the only ones that just let everyday people just buy as many guns as they want. So
Okay, and yeah, exactly, and you can never have too many.
yeah.
I asked for the tariffs. Are the tariffs, the recent tariffs and the threats of tariffs and the saber rattling on tariffs, is that impacting you?
Yeah, that is definitely impacting us. It is something I've thought about quite a bit, and I mean, I understand kind of the reasoning for implementing tariffs from a political perspective, and using it as a negotiating tool. I will say, just to be perfectly clear, it's like we as as the importer and as the brand, we are the one that pays the tariffs. So when a 30% tariff is implemented, it's like we pay that as a duty. And ultimately,
But isn't that paid against the wholesale cost, not the retail cost? I mean, it's paid
that is
against the
true.
cost
Yeah.
at the time of importation.
Yeah.
So 30% retail or 30% tariff, if that was the number, just to use that number,
Yeah.
it wouldn't translate to 30% on the retail side. It would translate to somewhat less on the retail side because it was paid against the wholesale importation cost, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. 30% tariff is something that we'll adjust. I mean, as long as it's applied equally to everybody, we will adjust our business practices accordingly to deal with it. 150 for a while there, they were charging I think 150% tariffs. That would have a significant impact on us.
Hey,
Yeah,
it's all part of the game. It's all part of the
yeah,
game of getting to where you
yeah.
want to be, right? Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess, yeah, I mean, I try not to worry too much about it. I mean, ultimately, I mean, whether, the tariff situation is kind of out of my hands. So whatever the tariff rate is, we just kind of try to roll with the punches.
So what's next for Monstrum? I mean, upcoming products, upcoming either new directions, new technologies you're approaching. What's going to continue to differentiate you in your space as, you expect that other people are going to find your economies of scale and try to catch up to, the volume that you're doing and things like that? How do you stay in the lead?
I mean, we are constantly branching into kind of new categories. One thing that's new for us is pistol red dots. We've never really gotten into pistol red dots before, and unfortunately, like we've neglected it for far too long. It's taken us. I believe I mentioned before, like we don't want to enter a market and just become like an also ran. Like we wouldn't enter a market and just offer the same thing at the same price as say like a Holosun or a Vortex. Because if we did that, like why bother? There's no point in us replicating what they did because they already did it. So you may as well just buy it from them. So I mean, we're currently working on pistol red dots that they're going to be a fraction of the price at what you can buy from our competitors. These days you can probably buy a pretty decent pistol red dot for 150, $200. We want to come in at maybe half the price of that or less. We have a couple new pistol red dots that will probably be launching within the next month or two. So that'll keep us occupied for a bit. Yeah, I mean, we'll just do what we've always done. We just incrementally just improve our quality and just incrementally launch new product lines little by little.
Can you say anything about the color of reticles in terms of it used to always be red,
Mhm,
and then a lot of companies, including yours, came out with green, and I think
mhm,
some went to blue, and I don't know at what point it becomes eye candy or whether these different colors actually have functional benefits. I think green does because, for one thing, it's in a different part of the spectrum where your eye actually tends to have its primary focus. I don't know if you know the story of the old Ray-Ban aviators. They had kind of a greenish tint. And one time
mhm,
I talked to a Ray-Ban engineer about that. And they said, well, that's because your eye primarily focuses in that part of the spectrum. That's why they put the green
mhm.
tint in the lens. So, any comments on that, or is it just a case of I can put any color in there, or is there really a functional benefit?
My understanding of the red versus green comes more from the market perspective. Just seeing which one sells more and which one sells best, and how much does it cost to get green versus red. My understanding of it, though, from my perspective, is that green is easier to see in daylight than red. With respect to red dots, we're going to start with red. We'll take things one step at a time. We're going to start with red and see, just kind of go from there. But if we can deliver green at an attractive price, we'll do that also. I mean, if people decide they want purple or orange, and the sales numbers justify it, like we can make that too. But we'll start with red and then maybe move to green and then
What footprints? You can do RMSC or MOS, or do you know what footprints yet?
yeah, well, I mean, we're going to start with RMR and then an RMSC. I don't want to promise too much. A lot of this stuff is in the pipeline. I don't know if it's coming out 3 months or 3 years. So,
Okay.
well, but I can say with authority that an RMR and RMSC version are coming to the market soon. Yeah. As we are recording it, this is Prime Day, or this is the shopping holiday that Amazon invented several years ago. So this is one of our busiest this is one of our busiest weeks of the year. This year they've actually expanded it to a 4 day event. First they invented the holiday and called it Prime Day, and then several
Yeah,
years
yeah.
later they moved it to a 2 day event. This year they're trying out
Yep.
a 4 day event. Yeah, we're kind of juggling all these promotions and making sure everything's in stock right now. So
Yeah. I've already dropped hundreds of dollars today. I already know about it. Yeah. Yeah.
Any closing comments for you there, Gerald? This has been an entertaining show, and I want to really emphasize that we wouldn't bring you on if we didn't like your products.
I'm glad to hear it. Thanks for having me, and I mean, it was nice chatting with you.
Absolutely. All
There
right.
you go. Well, we'd like to thank Gerald Kim. He's the CEO of Monstrum. He came on today and talked to us about the value proposition of some of the optics that are available and how far superior, in my opinion anyway, they are to things that were available even just a few years ago. I was very, very impressed by the quality of the scopes that we've been able to review here, and I'm looking forward to spending a lot more range time with some of them actually. So, with that, Craig, I mean, I'm very impressed by his presentation, and again, the number of products that he has available, the number of SKUs he has available, just great stuff.
I think this dovetails really nicely with the show that we did with Ryan from ATN, where we talked about the digital scope space in both thermal and night vision scopes. This is a more traditional optics company,
Hmm.
obviously a lower price point. Even though there's a vast difference in cost between them, they're both value companies because they both live in the space and occupy that, top of the hill in terms of value
Hmm.
in both traditional optics and for people who need night vision or low light. Now we've covered both of those, and I'm still looking to get EOTech on at
Hmm.
some point because EOTech's technology is somewhat different than everyone else's in the holographic optics space,
Sure.
and I think that they have a valid story to tell. And you might think, EOTech value. Well, you know what? I kind of think they are because their stuff is so unique and to me so good. And you could have, I don't know, a whole conversation about their whole challenge that they had at some point and the point of aim shifting. Well, I want to get them on and let them tell that story,
Sure.
quite honestly. So anyway, for you guys who have not listened to those past shows, go back and listen to them. I mean, as I mentioned last time, they're kind of timeless shows. We don't do stuff that's, so specific in time that they don't have applicability. The medical show that we did, the storage show that we did,
Hmm.
the show about CCW Safe, all that stuff is absolutely as relevant now as the day we recorded it. So, website frugalfirearmspodcast.com. That's the clearinghouse for taking you to where all of our episodes are located. It's got the links to the Facebook page, the Twitter page. Oops, I'm sorry. It should be the X page. Has links to Instagram as well as links to our email. If you'd like to be on the show, please reach out to us. If you have questions, definitely do that as well. But what's the most important thing you can do? Like, subscribe, tell your friends, do those things because it helps us help you. And what are
Absolutely.
we here to do, Ken?
We are here to bring and show you the value proposition of the shooting sports and enjoyment. So, Craig, what are you doing this weekend?
This weekend, Ken, I am going to be featured on ESPN Radio out of St. Louis on the Big 550 KTRS, and we're going to be doing one of their shows with a gentleman named Dan Young, who is known for the Outdoor Call radio show for KTRS. It's called KTRS Outdoors, and that is going to be live on Sunday evening for any listeners either in the St. Louis area or who pull up their feed after the show.
Excellent. I'm glad to see that you're expanding our listeners across the nation. Well
Yep.
done.
Thanks very much for listening, folks. See you next time.
You. Bye bye. Grinding his own Newtonian telescope lens and how difficult that process was.
Is that your phone, Ken?
Yeah, I can't kill it in the background. I
Just
apologize.
chuck it in the other room or something. Go ahead and start that part over again. It was ringing over you talking. So
Sorry about that.